This is the Old Musician's Blog, number 30. It's interesting to me to think about the way that the world, that nature, if you like, that biology, chemistry, physics, and all of that, seem to have a self-governing aspect where they make adjustments to themselves and limit certain kinds of behaviors, like a thermostat does. If it gets too hot in the room, the thermostat turns off the heater. If it gets too cold, the thermostat recognizes that and turns on the heat. And this backwards and forwards of looking for a kind of dynamic equilibrium, I think it's called, is a very useful and ubiquitous. It is everywhere in nature. It's the reason, I think, perhaps why nature fills up the gaps in its own space, like volcanic plumes that different kinds of strange species adapt to and move into, and this is this form of thermostatic, self-limiting behavior that enhances certain kinds of behavior, turns things on, or stops that behavior by turning things off. And I see this in a lot of different places, and I noticed it in particular with in my own self with the use of the Green Lady. And with the Green Lady, I found that that if I was to have a baking day and to use rather a lot of it, well, the next day I was a little groggy and not feeling so good, and so on and so forth, and I was having a consequence to that action. And I found that in itself had a kind of a self-limiting aspect to it that allowed me to recognize that there was a certain amount that was very good. It was like it opened myself up, my mind up, to a kind of a creative space that allowed me to have a certain amount of its influence without the consequence, and also the secondary consequence of wanting more, which is the kind of addictive behavior rather than the thermostatic self-limiting behavior of substances. And I'm seeing that this same idea happens all over the place, and even in a situation where, for instance, last night I played the keyboard piano. I brought my own piano to a gig for the first Friday, and it was a very nice gig, and we were very much appreciated, and it was interesting to me because while none of us were top-tier musicians for the area, I realized that it really didn't matter, that it was all it was, so far as the audience was concerned, it didn't really matter whether we were virtuosos or not. The fact was that we were good enough for the situation that existed, and so we had a kind of, in a way, that was a form of the same kind of behavior of finding the ecosystem where one thrives, and in residing on that. Back in the olden days, when I played the lines, I would find that musically that there were hot and cold spaces in the lines, and that when I was playing to those people, that to find a hot or a warm space in the line, and then to reside there and to allow the eddy of the personal enjoyment to capture you for a period, that was a useful skill to be able to have, and I found that I was able to recognize those places more and more. Whereas when I came upon, a so-called cold space in the line, then that would be a space where I would do a little dance, circle around, and walk on. Keep on going into other spaces that allowed me to see where that might be. And these thermostatic, self-governing spaces have that perfect knowledge of the entirety of situations that allow for those kind of understandings on a cellular level to really find the correctness of a situation and allow that correctness to bloom and grow into its own garden of delights.